Yeah, again, we're seeing these three shifts. One is culture, which is what we've been talking about. The second shift is process, and the third is technology. And the technology enables the process, right? So traditionally, if we look at, again, as someone who came from the agency world building websites for clients, the traditional process typically is a very business-focused strategy. It's like a me. Why are we better than our competitors? Why should you care about us? It's a very ego-centric type of thing. And the reality is, these days, the customer doesn't care. They want a tailored experience around them, not a tailored experience around the company. And the second problem was that the traditional web process is typically a huge project. Anyone listening to this who went through a website redesign, I guarantee this sounds familiar. It was 3, 6, 9 months long, which is a huge time investment, and not to mention capital investment. It probably went late, delivered late. It probably launched over budget, and everyone was just so frustrated about the whole process at the end. And it's funny that we've just accepted that as that's the way you go about building one of these websites. And then inevitably you launch the thing and you're like, all right, that was it. I'm sick of this website thing. I'm frustrated with it. I'm going to move on to all this other stuff. And the website sits and decays for 2 years, very much like the CD software world, where they'd launch Microsoft 95 and 2 years later, 98 and 2 years later. And it was just we've learned in the software world to build peak performing software. That type of a process of these monster builds, these big launches, then set it and forget it is just not the way to do it. And so the modern process of web design starts with a customer-focused strategy. This is where you get an empathetic understanding of the world of your customer, and then weave the website in as a part of that journey. And it's subtle, but it's true. It's there's one approach, the traditional approach of we build this thing about our company, and we're going to just throw it at our customers, and hopefully it sticks somewhere. Or we go to their world, we understand their world, and we find the subtle nuances of their journey and their world, of where they're struggling and what they're trying to do. And we kind of weave the website in as a part of that journey, which again goes back to the experience disruption side of things. From there, once you have that view of the world, you need to build a site that looks and performs better than what you have today, but is just a starting point. You know that it's not going to be perfect. You know that you need to improve it, just like software launches, and it improves over time. And so we call that a Launchpad website. It's like the starting point of all your improvement efforts. And from there, once it's live, again, the technology enables us to have really rich understandings of the world of these customers. What are they clicking on? What are they interacting in? What stage of the buying process are they? What persona are they? And so you can continuously improve the site. You can build new features for other departments. You can build new customer experiences. So you can really continuously improve the site over time, and again, invest into that asset, get the flywheel going, and turn the website into a tool for growth versus a set it and forget it digital brochure. And so that's really the modern way that a lot of folks are going about it. We at HubSpot, we packaged this culture shift, the process shift, into a methodology. We call that methodology GrowthDriven Design. We have certifications on it. I know you at your agency are all about GrowthDriven Design and work with clients on it. And so again, it's just all these concepts that we've been talking about packaged into a system, and that's really the modern system to use.
So just going back on the element around the customer-focused strategy, and it makes perfect sense, of course. We're talking about a Launchpad site here, and businesses can be at different stages of their maturity, of course. If you're a business and you can sell to not just one customer type, but maybe you've got 3, 6, 9 different personas throughout the sales process, what's the general approach to that? I mean, we're talking about gradual improvements, using the data, having a Launchpad website. But if me with company ABC have 10 people I like to sell to, how do we go about looking at that and the customer focus piece at the start?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing is you're probably going to, if you're like most companies, like you said, you have different personas. Each persona has things that they care about, and they have different journeys that they go on in their lives to solve that. And your product or service, hopefully, is a part of that journey at a certain point. The problem is, it's one of the reasons that these projects spiral out of control is you can't do it all out of the beginning. There's no way that you can build a website that addresses every single persona at every single point of their journey. So what we talk about in GrowthDriven Design is focus. let's look at the highest impact personas and stages and start there and really do those well, really tailor the experience there, knowing that once we launch and we get into continuous improvement, then we can go to the next set of high impact personas or stages. And so that's one of the things as you come out of the strategy phase is to have all those things identified, have a journey map of where they go through, and then be able to determine based off your business goals, like here are the personas that result in this amount of average selling price, lifetime value, and start to prioritize, okay, we're going to focus on these 3 personas. We know we have 8, but we're going to start with 3. The other 5, we're going to do some light content on, and then leverage technology. Like that's the last shift that we're going to talk about, the technology to build targeted, dynamic, personalized experiences for each one of those. And if you do the work properly in the strategy phase, you're going to know exactly who they are, what they care about, the positioning, messaging that you need to talk to, what offers are interesting to them, and then leverage that technology to build it. Start with the key ones for the Launchpad, and then just know once it's launched, doesn't stop there. We're going to continue to work on tailoring out the experiences for each of the personas.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very common thing where companies do race ahead to get a website up there, to get it live, to get some collateral there, and then they move on to this kind of persona development and strategy, which effectively is backwards. That they need to sort of take a step back and start with the persona research, look at the key KPIs for the business departments, the revenue goals, and then mold that into the, as you say, weave in the web design.
Yeah, it's the difference of a business-focused strategy versus a customer. Business-focused strategy, again, let's build a website and we'll just kind of toss it at our customers and hopefully it sticks somewhere, versus let's meet them where they're at and understand that world and then build it around them and tailor it around them, which is exactly how the software companies do it, right? So it's like this story is already there. It's like now we're just learning it in the web world.
Sure. And just going back to the word Launchpad, because I know from personal experience that sometimes it takes a bit of education to get across to clients what a Launchpad is. It's like, well, I don't want a Launchpad. I want a full website. Why are you only giving me a Launchpad? And I guess, as part of that kind of question there, for companies who are building a website from scratch, hey, it all sounds pretty easy. We get a Launchpad, we build on it, we continuously improve. What about those companies who just need to change their website? They've got a lot of content, a lot of data. How do we go from what might be quite a large website into this Launchpad?
Yeah, I think there's some misconceptions. I think people kind of like jump to conclusions pretty quickly. What we need to start with is what's the goal of a Launchpad website? The goal is to build a site that looks and performs better than what you have today, but do it quickly and get it out into the world, right? So we can collect data and make more informed decisions. So the question is how do you build a website that looks and performs better, but do it quickly? And I think the misconception or the assumption is that the only way to do that is to cut down and pare down the size of the site. And the reality is yes, of course, if you have less pages, less sections, like it's a lot easier to do that, but that's not the best path to take for a lot of companies. You could have a large enterprise company that's got multiple locations and multiple places, and they need to take a very different approach to building out what their Launchpad site is. So in the certification, we talk about 5 different approaches, and you can kind of use some of these approaches in tandem, but it's really, again, where you need to work with a good strategic partner like yourselves at an agency that can guide you on what's the best approach for our particular scenario. There's no like cookie cutter formula of like do X, Y, and Z for your site, because every site is different, every business is different. And so I'll give you one example really, really quickly of one of the approaches. So the other approach is for you to take a step back and look at the format on which work is getting done. So you're doing the exact same work, you're getting the exact same end deliverable, but how is your team going about building those? And if I look back to my days at the agency, if I take one of the parts of the website process, like wireframing, for example, what would happen is I did all the UX at the agency. So I would sit down after all the strategy and I'd start mapping out these like structures of these wireframes. I'd do all the pages, maybe took me 4 or 5 days. And then I would send it over to the client. Or in this case, maybe a client would have to send it to a stakeholder. And, that client is out of town, and then they get back, and then they have questions, and then they got to share it with their team. And eventually 3, 4, 5 days later, you meet to answer questions. And what I'm getting at is that this process of how we build those wireframes, the deliverable is the same. We want to sign off on the wireframes to move forward. But this asynchronous back and forth causes a lot of confusion and requires, let's say, 5 business days. That's conservative, but let's say 5 business days of back and forth to get that deliverable done. Mm-hmm. So what we talk about in GrowthDriven Design is that the right approach for completing those? How about, what if we got in a room together for a half a day, got whiteboard, or if it's virtual, you could use even PowerPoint, and work as a team to, in a half-day workshop format, with the goal of leaving that workshop with a sign-off from all the stakeholders. So you got to involve the stakeholders and get them in a workshop. Now you've cut down 5 business days to a half of a business day. And if you find, by leveraging the format of a workshop versus the format of this asynchronous back and forth email chain and context switching, right? So that's shrinking it down. That's one area of the process that you can leverage workshops as a format. There's other areas within the process. And so that's where you start getting the same deliverables. I would argue better deliverables, because when you get everyone on the same page, and you get the creative people who are good workshop facilitators can really get good creative ideas rolling, you're going to end up with a better end deliverable, and you get it done in less time. Now, the last thing I'll say on this is, a lot of times people are like, well, I can't get everyone in a room for a half a day. It's just too time consuming, blah, blah, blah. I guarantee that the back and forth asynchronous context switching, confusion, miscommunication is eating up more actual hours on the clock than if you just got everyone in a room and just cranked out in a half a day. It's just, when you look at how people work, and the way that the work naturally happens, you're going to save net amount of time by just getting together, cranking it out, and moving on, than bouncing around between all these different projects and between different stakeholders and all this stuff. So
it definitely does. And I know from our own experience, because we do a lot of these workshops, and it's amazing how sometimes we're sitting in a room with people from different departments in a company, and it becomes very apparent they haven't really talked to each other for quite a long time. And all of a sudden we start with an agenda, but then it actually turns into almost a strategy meeting for them, the sales, the marketing, their partnerships. All of a sudden it's, okay, I see how this could work. And it really, as far as actually proving ROI and getting sort of benefits for this kind of a project, it's effectively just a case of listening, understanding, and knowing where the best points are to strike in terms of where the revenue is going to come back, or where the customer satisfaction is going to increase, or even where the reduction in operational costs might be.
Yeah. Workshops are magical. I think in another life or in a future life, I'll do workshops full time, because they are just so magical, and probably a whole separate conversation. But again, going back to the Launchpad sites, that's a second approach on how you speed up, how you build a site that looks and performs better than what you have today, but do it quickly. And so there's 3 more approaches that we talk about in the cert. And you as a company and as an agency advising can pick the best path to do that. And one that fits really well and will get you in a good spot.
No, it makes sense. And we've also had quite a lot of experience doing sort of the growth-driven design, slightly different, just depending on each client. But I think the key for us has always been, it has been flexible, it has been efficient. And like I always say, a very simple example, it's like going to the gym. You can't just do it for summertime. You need to keep going back. So at Christmas, you don't look like you've had the full turkey. But
you can't just take a pill. You can't just take a pill and it magically happens.
Exactly. And
there's no one growth hack that makes all the magic happen.
Well, exactly it. And it's all about continuous improvement, adapting it, and keep tweaking it. So we certainly live by that kind of approach.